Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rescue the Republic. This is where your voices are heard. It's time to stand up. Let's have a warm welcome for Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thank you guys for weathering the weather. You're getting a little special preview of today's event, which officially begins at noon today. But we wanted to kind of tee things up. You guys know the long list of incredible speakers that'll be out here today, including this guy, Jordan Peterson, who's wearing 2 suits. That's how hard he's working. Woo! We've got Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and Russell Brand. Woo! And many other great speakers. And we are trying to figure out, guys, exactly what you're trying to figure out. Can we save this thing? Can we rescue this thing? Can we restore this thing? That is what today is about, and we're thrilled that you guys came out early for us on this rainy day. So Jordan and I are just going to kind of diagnose some of the problems, talk a little bit about what you're going to see throughout the day today. And, well, Dr. Peterson, we haven't been on stage together in a couple of years, so this is very nice for me personally. What do you think? Can we restore? Can we save this republic? Where are we at?
Well, you know, I've spent a lot of time over the last years traveling all around the world, you know, and I've spent an awful lot of time in the United States. I've maybe been to 250 cities here, and lots of them more than once, and there's every reason to be stunningly optimistic, you know. I mean, the rate of technological transformation is posing all sorts of complex problems, but there's no reason to assume that you people in particular in the United States can't get on top of this. You've got on top of many things many times in the past. And so one of the things we've got to understand that although there are a multitude of problems that beset us, there's an unlimited field of opportunity. I mean, there's all sorts of things to consider very briefly in that regard, you know. When I was a young man, everyone was convinced, especially the Malthusian doomsayers, that the planet could only sustain at most 4 billion people and that there would likely be starvation even at that level by the year 2000. Now we have 8 billion and we'll peak out at about 9 by all appearances, and we've almost eradicated absolute poverty all around the world, and there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that that can't continue. And the technological miracles that are in front of us offer the possibility of a future of unlimited abundance and opportunity if we could shake the anti-human idiocy and the unnecessary guilt. And I think, you know, one of the things that I've also concluded, and I think I've been more convinced of the truth of this all the time, is that which of those directions we go, up or down, isn't predetermined. It's a choice that we all have in front of us, including the choice that you all have in front of you. I mean, that sentiment is exactly why you're here today, because you believe that. And one of the things to walk away from this event with is renewed conviction that you have something to do. That's your responsibility and your adventure, and that's crucially important, and that if you don't do it, then you leave a hole in the world that won't be filled by anyone else. And so one of the things I hope that makes the movement that we're all trying to produce here potentially different from the typical top-down globalist utopian solutions is that it's your responsibility and your adventure. And if we do that properly, and you Americans have done a fantastic job of that for 200 years, then you can renew your country and the whole world, just like you have many times before in the past. So
So one of the things that I'm most excited about, and I suspect every single one of you is most excited about for being here, is that this alliance of people politically could have never happened 5 years ago. The idea that Russell Brand and RFK and Tulsi, and I see a lot of MAGA hats out there, this thing that is happening right now, it absolutely transcends politics. We're coming together over health, over caring deeply about this country, our founding documents, our founding fathers, all of the beautiful monuments that are here right now. What do you make of this realignment that we're seeing right now? Because it really is, it has the potential to save the country. I don't know that anything else can.
Well, I'm very optimistic about it, and also, I would say, very surprised about it in exactly the way you just described. I mean, first of all, we have this strange spectacle on the Republican side at the moment of a very influential group of people who are heading up the Republican movement, all of whom were essentially Democrats. And so that's a remarkable, now they're disaffected Democrats, and that even includes Trump to some large degree. It's certainly the case with Musk and Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy. And so that's, and so that's a remarkable thing to see. And I also think the Trump administration, the Trump presidential campaign has a real opportunity here too, because one of the things that has concerned Americans who are doubtful about Trump over the last few years, despite the fact that his presidency, let's say, was marked by a remarkable peace, and thank God for that, was his capability, his capacity, let's say, to put together a stellar team and to be more than merely Trump himself. Not that he isn't a force to be reckoned with. And now he has aligned with him these people who are truly remarkable. Like, I can't imagine anything more revolutionary in the positive sense, for example, than a Department of Government Efficiency that was actually headed by Elon Musk. I mean, that's just one revolutionary possibility, which is a very, merely that is something of singular importance, but that's not all, because you have Kennedy, for example, already he's already transformed the political landscape quite radically and quite suddenly by turning everyone's attention to issues of public health, and that hasn't been a political issue, and it's really quite surprising, because there is an epidemic of ill health that besets America and the West in general. Obesity and insulin resistance or diabetes first and foremost among them, and we have no idea, none of us, we have no idea how much the malaise that affects the country, even politically, is a secondary consequence of ill health. And the fact that that's at least become a political issue now is notable and also revolutionary. And then with Tulsi Gabbard, you have a woman who I would say is everything that the Democrats hoped Kamala Harris would be. And so that's also a remarkable thing to see. So it would be lovely to see these X-Men that Trump has gathered around him, because that's also a very comical co-occurrence. To see the Republicans, as they move forward toward the election, stress the fact of this team. I don't think that everyone has adjusted their, what would you say, conception of what's happening on the political stage to include the fact that this is now a stellar team. And to start to understand the significance of that, it's a really exciting thing to see. And I guess we're going to see some of that today, right? We're going to see how that's starting to play out. So. Woo!
Yeah, and we should note, just even relative to where we're standing right now with the Washington Memorial behind us and the Jefferson Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial, that this country was founded on the idea that we were going to be different. We were going to be different and think different things. And I guarantee you, if we polled every single one of you out here, this would probably be the widest tent of political thought in America today. That is rare.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about this team, I think putting together a revolutionary team in the political landscape is always a dangerous thing, because mostly what you want from your political leaders when everything is working well is sort of calm and predictable stability, so that you can ignore the political and you can get on with your own life. And that'd be a lovely thing to see. And now you have in front of you a relatively revolutionary cabal of potential leaders, and there's peril in that. But one of the things that constrains that and hems that in the most appropriate possible way is the fact that all of the people who are putting themselves forward are patriots. They're American patriots. They're pro-human. And they're also very, very strong advocates for free speech. And one of the things I think that's very useful to understand about free speech is some of the things that are useful to understand about free speech is that in some ways it's a freedom among others. You're free to say what you want, even if you're a fool, even if you're a liar, partly because sometimes people don't know that they're lying, and sometimes they don't know that they're fools, and if they can speak freely, they can discover both of those. But it isn't only one freedom among men, and this is a very crucial thing to understand, because psychologically speaking, there isn't really any difference between free speech and thought. Like, if you're capable of thinking, then at least part of what you do when you're thinking is conduct a debate that's essentially free speech predicated in the confines of your own imagination. You divide yourself into more than one person. You put forward a party in your imagination that stands for different opinions, and you let those opinions speak to one another, and you debate. And the reason you do that is so that you can think something through clearly. And the reason you do that is so that you can act more efficiently and intelligently in the world. And so free speech, being not merely one freedom among many, is actually the mechanism by which human beings and societies compute the transforming horizon of the future. That's the edge that we live on. And if you interfere with free speech, then you interfere with the mechanism that allows people to transform and adapt. And if you do that, well, obviously you're going to stagnate and fail. Like, clearly. Now, it's a messy business, because when we're faced with what's truly unknown, we don't know what we're doing. We have to dispute and argue, and even intensely, and even in a way that will put people's feelings on the line. It's a lot better to have your feelings on the line than your life, you know? And if you adopt the responsibility of maintaining that commitment to free speech, you can organize yourself psychologically, you can organize your marriage and your family, you can organize your communities, you can revitalize them, and you have in this team that's generated itself around Trump very, very fervent advocates for free speech. And that's another thing that America has to offer the world in terms of model, because of all the countries there are in the world, including my own country, which is failing dismally on the free speech front, and the UK, which is also in the same boat. There's nothing that you Americans have brought to the world that's more compelling and necessary than the primacy of freedom of thought and
speech. So why don't we see if we can put a little pressure on President Trump for a moment, because with this lineup and this group of people that you've just mentioned, maybe by round of applause we could see if we could fill some of those slots for him. So it sounds like Elon for governmental efficiency. We were down with that. That sounded right. He's already offered to do it for free, so that's pretty good. That's pretty efficient. How about, I don't know how much he's going to appreciate this, but we'll send RFK in to take out the CDC and the NIH. What do you think? Tulsi's definitely not going to be happy with me, but Secretary of Defense sounds right. Now, you, my friend, you're not American, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to at least be very pleased to be here. I mean, I've been in.
Wow, you became a politician right there. That was...
I spent a lot of time in Washington in recent years and in the United States over the course of my life, and it's a real privilege to be here. I mean, it's remarkable thing to be here today and to be involved to any degree at all. And so, I'll do what I can in any manner that I can, including what we're all going to do today, and hopefully this will work out wonderfully.
So I think since we're going to mostly talk about solutions today, it's going to be a day of solutions. It's going to be a day about how to restore this republic, how to get healthy, how to focus on free speech, all of these things. What do you see as beyond free speech, which you just illustrated, what do you see as something that we really could fix right now if we focused properly? If we got out of this partisan shenanigans and craziness that we could really fix if the country wanted to?
Well, I think
everything.
I've been thinking this through in a broad way, partly with this Alliance for Responsible Citizenship that I've been involved in the UK, and we've been trying to bring centrist conservatives and classic liberals together, the people who occupy the 90% of the middle that defines the United States in the most positive way, but also the Western world in general. And we thought of many things that seem relatively straightforward and obvious. I mean, one of the things you guys really have going for you is inexpensive energy. The UK, people in the UK and in Germany now, they're spending 5 times as much per unit of energy as you are. And that's absolutely catastrophic on the economic side. And this is something that really annoys me about the leftists in particular, because expensive energy is absolutely devastating to the poor. And in principle, the progressive types are advocates for the poor and the dispossessed, but there isn't anything worse that you can do to the poor and dispossessed in the West and also in the world at large, particularly in places like Africa, than make energy expensive. And we have plentiful, the US, you guys have been so remarkable in this, with the fracking revolution in particular, producing this immense, vast storehouse of very, very inexpensive energy, in particular natural gas, that's also extremely clean, especially compared to the sorts of fuels that people burn alternatively, like coal or biofuels like dung in places like Africa, which are terribly polluting indoors in particular and kill many, many people. And so cheap energy, that's be a huge benefit. Cheap, expensive, plentiful, reliable energy from whatever sources we can derive it, nuclear, fossil fuel, and if the renewables can get themselves together without subsidy and start to play a contributing role, well, so much the better. But cheap energy is a big one. I think another thing that's very much worth concentrating on, this is something Musk has been trying to bring to the forefront of public attention. It's going to become a vast issue, is that the birth rate across the United States and the West in general is cataclysmically low. It's a terrible thing. And many, many young people are without relationships, without intimate relationships, many without children, no multi-generational continuity, and no concentration on the family. And for the vast majority of people, especially sensible people, sensible, sane, hopeful, forward-looking people, there isn't anything more vital and meaningful and necessary than their family. And part of Dave was talking about the problems that beset us, and Musk has pointed this out too. There's a profoundly anti-human sentiment that drives the more pathological end, say, of the Green Movement. And there's reasons to be environmentally concerned, don't get me wrong, but telling people that you shouldn't have children because it's bad for the planet, I really can't think of anything more malevolent, almost nothing more malevolent than that. That's an appalling sentiment. And young people obviously are sufficiently demoralized so that they're not having relationships or children. And any society that doesn't put, let's say, mother and child first and foremost as something approximating a sacred image is doomed. I'll mention one more issue that I think is relevant too. there is one thing that the left and the right agrees on. You know, it's a strange thing, and the commonality here is not often pointed out. But, you know, the left is very skeptical of big corporations, or at least used to be. And the right is very skeptical of big government. And it doesn't take a real genius to point out the fact that both sides are skeptical of big. And right. And there's something to really be said about that, because one of the problems that occurs when organizations grow beyond their suitability is that they start to capture the systems that are supposed to regulate them. And you see the emergence of a kind of corporation, governmental agency, media fascism. And fascism is derived from a word that means to bind together. And when the giants at the top start binding together, you're in a dynamic that looks something like tyrant and slaves. And so one of the things that everybody, especially on the American side, could come together and agree about is that we have to be very careful that our radically successful enterprises, media, government, and corporations don't get so top-heavy and gigantic that they start tromping around blindly and destroying everything. And that's a completely bipartisan issue, and one that's necessary to address.
So we've got about 3 more minutes here, and then we're going to kick off the day. I just want to say one other thing, and then I'm going to give Jordan the last word, because that's what you do when you're on stage with Jordan Peterson. Which is that, you know, we've been in this game for quite some time, and we've seen these trends, and we've been calling out a lot of this early on. But I can feel something in this crowd right now, just with the diversity of hats and the way you guys have applauded and everything else, that I have not seen. You know, I did not vote for Donald Trump the first time around. I voted for the Libertarian candidate. I did vote, obviously, for Trump the second time around. And it was because I went to a rally in 2016. 2020. I went to a rally, and I saw this. I saw a group of people who love the country, who want to set the differences aside, who don't care. Who don't care about all the little things that divide us. We could get to that, but we got to save this thing first. And that's what I see, the seeds of being planted right here. That's why it's an honor and a pleasure to kick off today with you. And I will give Jordan the last word.
So the last word, all right. So, you know, it's as I said, it's a stellar opportunity and an honor for me to be in D.C. again and speaking in this platform and in this country. And, you know, maybe I have a viewpoint of the United States that's useful, just as a bit of an outsider. You know, there's so many things that you people speaking generally got right, and there's a real pervasive doubt in the West. You know, I see people in the UK, for example, right now debating whether or not Great Britain has a culture, which is, and I saw the same thing, for example, in the Netherlands, and these stellar countries that have these deep, abiding, profound traditions, many of which affected the manner in which your own country developed, you know, and I see this pervasive doubt in the West about the validity of our own foundations, and I've investigated that psychologically for a very long time, and I do believe that there's many things that we got profoundly right that can't be abandoned. The notion that each person is made in the image of God and has a value that's intrinsic outside the political, you know, and that's true for man and woman alike. That's a revolutionary proclamation, and any society that fails to accept that immediately degenerates into something like a tyranny. So we got that right. The notion that free speech is necessary for the reasons that we already described, that it maintains and sustains and expands both the psyche and the state, that's right. These are foundational realities. The notion that individual sacrifice is akin to responsibility, that's associated with adventure, and that the sacrifices that you make on behalf of your own well-being, your wives and your husbands, your children and your communities, that's actually the foundation of civilization, right? The sacrificial gesture is the foundation of civilization. That's exactly right. And one of the things that we could walk away from this rally with is a renewed understanding and appreciation for the fact that the fundamental ground under our feet is as firm and rock solid as it can possibly be, and that if we could advance into the future with what kind of a faithful, courageous optimism rather than a naive optimism that there's absolutely no limits to what we can do. And you can see that expressed by someone like Musk, because Musk is literally aiming at the stars, and there's a fair bit of performance in that, right? It's like, what's humanity capable of? Like the moonshot demonstrated, for example. What can we do if we set our minds to it? And the answer seems to me is that there's an unlimited future of possibility and no necessity for that Malthusian limited resource, zero-sum, dismal power game that seems to beckon as the alternative. So, courageous optimism and appreciation for our foundations. That's a lovely sentiment to end this with.
It's really great. Just as Jordan was saying that, I don't know if you guys can see it behind the stage here, but somebody unfurled a giant half Canadian, half American flag. And I think that's their way of saying you're welcome. You're welcome here, my friend. Guys, thank you very much for coming out. This is just the beginning of what's going to be a great time.
That's my friends, man. I love it.
Thank you, everybody. Very nice.